So last time I talked about how Texas became independent from Mexico, and today we'll talk about how Texas became part of the United States. So pretty much right away in 1836, Texans voted to be annexed by the United States. They wanted to be annexed or added to the United States. Some people in the U.S. supported that, some people opposed it. The supporters tended to be Southerners and Democrats. They wanted more slave states, and they knew that Texas would be one of those slave states. The opposition came from Whigs and Northern Democrats. Mostly. Now Jackson and Van Buren, Jackson is president up until 1837, and then he's followed by Van Buren, of course. They opposed it mostly because they didn't want to deal with the slave-free state controversy. They knew it was a big controversial political issue, and they didn't want to basically deal with it. A lot of people worried that annexation would lead to war with Mexico, too. Mexico had just signed a treaty giving Texas its independence. It seemed a little shady, frankly, if the United States went ahead and took over Texas at that point. So this went on for a few years, this kind of political controversy about it, but by 1845, Polk is president, and we know he's a big expansionist. He's all about manifest destiny, and he and both Congress support annexation. So Texas became the 28th state in the United States in December of 1845. And through gaining Texas, we also gained parts of the modern-day states of New Mexico, Oklahoma, Colorado, Wyoming, and Kansas as well. Now, of course, Mexico was not too happy when Texas became part of the United States, and soon that led to war. Now, the U.S. claimed the Rio Grande River as the official southern border, and that's the current border that we have between Texas and Mexico today. President Polk, sends an ambassador, John Slidell, to Mexico City, and he offers to buy New Mexico and California for $30 million at this point, because those are very, very valuable commodities that the United States wants. And the Mexican government refused to see him. A lot of it had to do with the poor relation between the United States and Mexico, a great deal of which had to do with the whole Texas issue. So taking a look at the map here, if you look at the orangish area, that is the area that was accepted by the Mexican government, at least, as what was Texas at the time. Now, the whole green area you see there was in dispute. It was claimed by both Texas and Mexico. So when the United States annexes Texas, that area is going to be disputed between Mexico and the United States, basically. You can see some of the battles in the Texan War for Independence are shown in the orange here on the map. But what I do want you to look at is the boundary between the green area and that beige area between Texas and Mexico. That's the Rio Grande River. That's the current border between Texas and Mexico. And of course, as a result of the Mexican-American War, we gained that territory. But a lot of it had to do with that green area on the map. So amidst this tension between the United States and Mexico, President Polk sends troops to secure the border, or what he believed was the border between the United States and Mexico. Of course, what you've seen from that map shows that there was a great discrepancy between what the United States saw as the border and what Mexico saw as the border. So Mexico considers this an invasion into their territory. And so they open fire on the Americans. Some Americans are killed in a small battle, a skirmish with the Mexicans. And Polk uses this as a justification for war, asking Congress to declare war, which they did in May of 1846. Really, Polk was looking for justification for war. He didn't want to be the one to fire the first shots in this war, and so he orchestrated it so that the Mexicans would attack first. If you're looking at the painting here, you're going to see the Mexican troops on the right with the American troops on the left. Now, while all of that is going on in Texas, California is up for grabs. American settlers there launched a rebellion against Mexico under John C. Fremont and declared the Republic of California. This is known as the Bear Flag Revolt, and you can see the California flag right there, the California Republic, which it was for a period of time before it became part of the United States. American troops then invaded New Mexico, and so by January 1847, the U.S. has gained control of New Mexico and California, taking control of those away from the Mexicans. Now, after winning and gaining control of the northern territories that were once part of Mexico, General Zachary Taylor drove troops south into Mexico, capturing the capital of Mexico City. If you've heard of Zachary Taylor before. That's because he would later go on to be a U.S. president. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848 ended the war. It stated that the Rio Grande River would be the southern border of the United States. It gave New Mexico and California to the United States, as well as parts of the other states that you see here: Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, much of what is the modern southwest United States. In return, the United States gave Mexico $15 million to basically legitimize this transfer of land. A later treaty happens 5 years later. It's known as the Gadsden Purchase. In this purchase, the United States bought southern New Mexico and Arizona, areas that are currently part of the United States, but at the time were still part of Mexico, for $10 million because they needed to build a railroad through those areas. So as for the effects of the Mexican War, the first is that it established the boundaries of the continental United States as we know them now. That refers to the lower 48 as they're known. So all of the states except for Alaska and Hawaii were fixed into their current borders as of 1853 after the Gadsden Purchase. It also created or intensified very poor relations with Mexico that will continue on even into the 20th century. It led to a larger wave of Western migration as these territories were now open to U.S. settlement. And the acquisition of that new territory, though, threw the balance between slave and free states into question. Would that new territory be free and close to slavery, or would slavery be allowed there? And that becomes a very lingering question that will lead us into the Civil War less than 10 years after this war. An example of the tension that we will see in Congress as a result of these new territories is exemplified by the Wilmot Proviso. And a proviso is just like a provision, basically. So a Pennsylvania senator, obviously a northerner, named David Wilmot, proposed that slavery should not be allowed in the territories that were gained from Mexico. Southern states threatened secession if this was passed by Congress. And so we definitely see an increase in tensions between North and South that again will lead us to the Civil War. Pictured here you see Senator David Wilmot. So that's really going to lead us to our next unit, which will be the Civil War. But what happens here that we've just talked about is really setting the stage for that with the acquisition of all of this new land and these new territories.